Well, welcome once again to the Party of One podcast, the actual play RPG podcast where the gaming table is always set for two. I'm your host, as always, Jeff Stormer. This week on the show, I am joined by musician Jayne Dent for a game of Autumn of Giants by Melody Saturn. Autumn of Giants is a collaborative storytelling game of a group of humans guiding and protecting a colossus on the way to rest and shelter for the winter. It tells of a desolate and gentle journey through lonely and beautiful places and a small group of people who will do everything they can to protect a friend. It is inspired by games like Fall of Magic, People Get Older, Shadow of the Colossus, The Last Guardian, and even The Ocean. When I tell you that this game is beautiful, that is an understatement. Like, I was moved and struck by this game. Some of the visuals and feelings I still, hold in my heart weeks after we played it. This game rules. Please go check it out. You can find more information at melodysaturn.itch.io or check the show notes for more information. Jayne is a techno-folk musician whose new album, RPG, plays on the kind of storytelling tropes featured in games both digital, such as Legend of Zelda, as well as tabletop role-playing games themselves. The album itself is beautiful and wonderful. It kicks ass. I've listened to it, the first time I sat down and listened to it, I was, blown away. I was like, oh, this fucking rules. You can find a link to the album, which was released on July 7th, in the show notes. It is just a beautiful album. It pulls on all these different sounds and styles and genres and themes. It's something special, and I really think that you should check it out. You can find a link to the album in the show notes or head to upsettherhythm.bandcamp.com to download your own copy. Hey everybody, Present Jeff here with a quick statement that we stand in complete solidarity with our friends in the WGA and SAG-AFTRA unions as they strike, fighting for better working conditions and a better, more equitable path forward in the industry. We stand in complete solidarity, which means that we will not be taking or promoting any struck work during the duration of the strike. And of course, the best way, if you would like to support the strike, is by donating to the Entertainment Community Fund, which supports individuals whose work has been put on hold due to the strike. Anyone who donates to the Entertainment Community Fund can send me proof of a donation of any amount. I will send you an exclusive, secret, never released Party of One episode, as well as a digital version of any single one of my games, your choice. Thanks everybody. Solidarity forever. And with all that said, let's go ahead and throw it over to me in the past so that he can get started with the show. Take it past me. Thanks, future me. I'm really excited this week. I'm sitting down with Jayne Dent. Jayne, thank you so much for coming on Party of One.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited.
I am so excited. I really have been looking forward to this game all day. I think this is going to be a really wonderful experience. But before we get into that, why don't you take a moment and let our lovely listeners at home know about anything you've got going on that you might want them to know about?
Yeah, so my name's Jayne. I'm a musician, composer and artist based in Newcastle in the northeast of England. And I write and perform sort of folk-influenced electronic music under the name Me Lost Me. And I just put out a new album on the label Upset the Rhythm, which is called RPG. The idea behind the title was that this thought that songwriting was a kind of role-playing game, like a medium where you can take on a character and tell a story. So each song on the album is sort of a new game I'm playing in a way and a new world to explore. So that's just come out recently. I
heard the pitch of the album and truly in terms of saying reading things and hearing things that speak my fundamental language about the world and the way that we interact in it, I was immediately wrapped up in it. And then I listened to some of it and I was like, oh, yep, nope, this is it. This is going to be my thing for a while. I was swept up in it and it made me really happy. It's beautiful and I loved it. And it's great.
Oh, thank you so much.
And we've got a game in front of us today that I'm very, very excited about. I think that it is one that I've really been looking forward to. We are playing Autumn of Giants by Melody Saturn. It is a collaborative storytelling game about we are going to go on a journey guiding and protecting a colossus on its way to shelter for the winter. The way that this is going to work is that we are going to create characters. We're going to create the sort of colossus, the big, gigantic elemental being that we are guiding and protecting and looking after. And then we're going to go on a journey. We're going to see some locations as it goes, where it goes to rest for the winter, among others like it. As fall colors give way to winter snow, we know that the colossi shall soon enter hibernation. We travel with one such colossus, keeping them safe on their journey to gather with others like them. That's the pitch in the nutshell, which it hits me in the heart, and I'm really excited to play through it.
Yeah, I'm very excited. As soon as I saw it, I was like, this is the one.
One of the things that I distinctly love about making the show is like finding a game that I'm like, I'm pretty sure that the guests and I are going to connect on this in a really deep way. And this one I looked at for a while and I was like, this might be the one. So we are going to create some characters. The way that we're going to do this, we can do this in any order. There are sort of three things that make up the character. We have a name, which is a name. We have a title, which is a broad role that we play in the group, and then a symbol that represents our character. If we were playing this in person, we would draw this symbol on a note card, and then we would, as we kind of roll out a map between us, we would sort of draw this symbol on various locations. Because this is a remote game, we're just going to pick the symbol as it represents us. And then we'll kind of describe how it comes up in the various locations and things that we do. But it's a good thing for us to have, as it kind of grounds us. I think I know what I want my symbol to be, and I'm going to kind of work backwards from there. But is there where is your head at as you start to think about these big questions and this character that you're creating?
I thought it would be really fun actually when I was first reading the suggestions that maybe I could try the character on the front of my album cover is a painting by Lucy Wright, and it's a painting of a sort of human that's kind of turning into a rowan tree, walking and like carrying a synth under her arm. And I kind of was like, maybe I could try being that or something of that kind of character, because I've not really explored her as a character on her own. So yeah, maybe thought Rowan
Love that.
My character. Yeah.
You have made my entire, like, that one statement has made my entire day. I'm so happy about this. I kind of started with the symbol, and like I looked at the symbols that were listed: a sprig, a leaf, a pebble, a book, a locket, a shovel. These are just the example symbols. We can pick anything, but looking at that list, the shovel like jumped out to me, and I really started kind of working backwards from that. There's just something very appealing to me about the shovel as an object.
It's also the most cumbersome one there. Like,
it kind of is. Now that you mention it, like these are all very like small personal things, and then you have sort of a big awkward shovel. And so I'm thinking like what would be, if I'm envisioning this, like this would be a symbol on paper, but I'm now also like visualizing carrying this. And that's the symbol that I'm pulling on, and I'm trying to decide what kind of title I want to give this character, what role a person has in the group that carries a shovel. I'm gonna go with a plower. A plower is the thing. I think it is specifically, and this might not be explicitly like that. I might be half making up, but this is also a fantasy world, so making up stuff is fair game. The idea of like it's almost a little like half gardening, half ditch digging, half like cultivation. There's a lot of things, and I like the term plower as like clearing out things for travel and for habitation is just like an appealing energy for a character to have, and that it is represented by this big clunky almost snow shovel where it's the big square with the big dip in it is appealing to me.
I like that. I like that it's sort of like now going through all the different problems that can be solved with a shovel, like on a journey, like all the different reasons you might need to use a shovel. That's exciting.
That's a good energy, and that I almost like this. That tells me a little bit about the character, if that it is that he's got a shovel, and that like that I'm thinking there's a joy in the character kind of following that same logic path of like, I have a shovel. My role is that I have a shovel, and like having to kind of justify his own existence as he has that shovel is like, I feel like I have a good knowledge of who this character is. His name is going to be, I'm going to go Crossin. Crossin is a fun character name. Crossin, he is a plower, which is a title that he has kind of made up to reflect the fact that the thing that he brought on this journey was a shovel, because it seemed like a sensible thing to bring, but it did not occur to him that he would have to have that justification until somebody asked him the question, Why do you have a shovel? And then he kind of spun everything out from there.
Yeah, like everything is his whole thing now is about just like proving that it was a practical and useful thing to bring on a journey. I like that. I
Yeah,
respect that.
I like that. I really love that. So what is Rowan's symbol?
I think. See, I'm trying to decide if Rowan is this character that is actually turning into a tree, or because these are supposed to be humans, aren't they? So
I feel
I
like we
don't
can.
know
I mean,
whether
we can. I love the turning into a tree. Like
kind
it could be. It could
of tree
be.
head.
Turning it. It could just be kind of a steady state of shifting between two states. Like there's a couple directions that we
Hmm.
can go with it, and I'm happy to lean into whichever one we go with.
In that case, I think it might be nice to take it like kind of literally as it is on the on this like image, which is that just kind of like turning into a tree in the process of
Hmm.
turning into a tree a little bit. Because otherwise I would have said maybe should be carrying something to do with the tree. But let's go fully magical.
Love it.
In that case, she's carrying a synth under her arm, but I don't know if that's a very useful thing. That's even less useful than a shovel, I imagine, in the wilds. But maybe some kind of there's lots of like dials and gadgets on it. So maybe a compass, I guess. It's sort of
Ooh, a
like a
compass
useful
is good.
and with the titles, one of the examples was Wayfinder, and she's kind of walking. So it
I
makes
love that.
sense,
I
yeah, that
love
maybe
that.
she's kind of helping us find a path or
That's
I
cool.
think a compass.
I love that. And I love so we've got our characters. We've got Rowan, a wayfinder with a symbol of a compass, and Crossan, a plower with a symbol of a shovel. Now we're going to meet our Colossus. There are some pre-generated ones that we can choose from, or we can go through the instructions of making one. I'm perfectly fine. I'm looking at the options. There's one or two of these pre-generated ones that really jump out to me.
Mm, yeah, I
Is
kind
there
of
any
kind of
that
love
are
them all.
I kind of also love them all, and I think for especially for the characters that we have kind of created, I love. I flipped through them, and my eyes have landed on Squall a few times. A colossus made of mountains, valleys, lakes, lightning, water stains, centuries, embodied by a storm cloud. I kind
Yeah,
of I have a big pitch for you. And it actually kind of immediately puts into context Rowan and Crossan as sort of the guides of this Colossus. It's
amazing.
almost a little bit, I'm reading through what this Colossus is made of, this storm guide, this gliding storm. There's almost a little bit of the vibe that I get is almost a little bit of like finding a path of least destruction, or of like finding a path of most unity, of this is a this is a colossus that is a form that has the potential to cause damage and harm, but also has the opportunity to like water plants and like or has like exists in a place that is really important to a lot of natural environments, but also has the opportunity to like damage homes and like hurt people. And I think there is, if our roles are like finding like wayfinding and clearing debris, there is
Mm,
kind of a natural thing of like maybe our role in guiding this colossus is helping it go to the places that it needs to go, while also like keeping it safe, like a safe distance from things that might not be ready to receive a massive living storm. How do you feel about that?
I absolutely love that. That's so exciting. I can picture it. My mind's going 100 miles an hour. Yeah. That
I
sounds
love
great.
yeah, okay. So we've created our characters. We have, as the game puts it, we have packed for the trip. We have made our characters. So the flow of the game from here is that we are going to draw two locations. We're going to randomly choose two of the locations ahead of us, and then we are going to choose that location, decide which location we're heading to, and then we've got some steps that we're going to follow through to describe that scene, face a challenge that our characters are going to undergo. These are going to allow us to shift pieces of our character, and then we are going to eventually like find the resting place of our colossus and sort of guide itself to its resting place for the season.
Mm.
So with that, I am going to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There are 11 locations. Let me randomly pull two of them and pull up a random number generator so that we can pull two of these random locations. Would you like for our Colossus to head towards the sun-drenched dunes or the tatter-drape cliffs?
Ooh, I think Tattered Drape Cliffs. That speaks to me for some reason.
Okay. So we begin at you said Tatterdrape Cliffs. We
Yeah.
begin at the Tatterdrape Cliffs, ragged banners tossed in the gust, pebbles crumbling downhill, narrow paths and winding slopes. We now play out like a short scene together alongside our Colossus to answer the question, what are we afraid to lose? So, where do we find ourselves alongside our Colossus as we start our journey in the Tattered Drape Cliffs? What's the place and the situation that emerges in your head as you think about this?
I guess I can kind of picture this storm um kind of coming together like above the very top of a kind of cliff face and like a maybe mountain range, quite remote. And the storm is kind of, yeah, coming down from the top, and maybe we're kind of a little further down and it's coming down to meet us
Yeah,
a
and
little bit, and we're kind of, yeah, watching it come down and sort of in awe and terror, I imagine.
and there's sort of a thing where like I imagine, if you imagine like a storm kind of tumbling down a mountain, like the changes in, the changes in atmosphere are going to be uh interesting because like you're going to go from this very like higher atmospheric storm, this sort of like roiling big thunderous thing, to sort of like down in the valley where it's very kind of wet and it's very like the water is pooling because you're coming downhill. I imagine that that also evokes a change in the Colossus itself, right? Like I imagine that sort of experience, you're kind of seeing the change in that Colossus. And so we have that sense of terror, and then we also kind of see the sort of dynamic shifting nature of Squall as they present themselves to us, is like, and it kind of maybe, I think, crossing, I'm picturing like a short, stout kind of fellow, almost shorter than his shovel that he wears on his back. So it kind of like peeks out on both sides of him, and it kind of requires a little bit of like moving the shovel and kind of bending himself at the hips to get into places and spaces. I imagine like watching this, like, and seeing the way that like it kind of underscores, I think, the importance of what we do in guiding Squall, is that we kind of see that, where Squall goes, it's going to change what that storm is and sort of what we present ourselves at, or what we are, like what we're doing and how we can help Squall be Squall's best self.
Yeah, I'm kind of picturing Squall kind of coming down, kind of with a sort of I need help kind of
Mm-hmm.
approach, like looking for assistance and kind of feeling this like Rowan and like feeling this kind of terror initially, and then this sort of shift to feeling this kind of empathy and like pity and like, oh, we can try and help. And this kind of, I don't know, I'm picturing Squall kind of like quite mighty, but also a bit kind of a crestfallen, or a bit like, I
Yeah.
want to, I really want to, I want to be better, and I need a little bit of assistance, and you
I
happen to be halfway up a mountain.
and I to the question of like what are you afraid to lose, I think that like there's almost a moment where I think like we are kind of awaiting this storm, and as we're seeing it come in, I think that there's a moment where Squall is coming down the mountain, and maybe like a cluster of rocks is like shattered by a lightning blast, right? Like this storm strikes this thing, and the mix of water and time and centuries and lightning and storms like crumbles this water and then immediately erodes it into dust that is swept up into the storm. And I think there's a moment where Crossan sees this and sort of like puffs out his chest and kind of like adjusts the shovel on his back a little bit to kind of like feel this feeling of like if there's damage, I've got the exact tool that's going to help us like clear some of this damage. And I think that uncertainty of why did me and why this shovel? There's a moment where he kind of sees that damage, and like I think what he's afraid to lose is the world. Like he's afraid there's a fear of like the world being lost and like the damage associated with that. But I think that it ties into this sense of it is a fear that is almost assuaged by his by like the sort of arbitrary decisions that he's made. Like that fear kind of feeds into that, and he starts to kind of like puff up his chest and kind of maybe even takes the shovel off of his back and kind of holds it like a spear at his side a little bit, like kind of taking a guard stance. And like I think Rowan can see Crossan like in his head a little bit, and there's a moment where he just kind of mutters like, I've been called to duty.
I think Rowan's very like I'm kind of imagining her in my head a little bit of a loner, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And she's kind of out there, sort of just kind of hanging out in the sort of woods and the fields, and quite likes this peace and quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like this storm is kind of interrupting that a little bit, and maybe also Crossan is interrupting it a little bit as well. Sort of being like, I'm kind of enjoying being in this nice peaceful space, just kind of finding my way around. And I think maybe what Rowan's afraid to lose is this kind of sense of peacefulness, and like being alone in the sort of wilderness. Not necessarily a good thing to be all the time, but I think it's something very precious to Rowan. And she's a bit like, okay, I see that Crossan feels this like been called to action thing, and she's a little bit of a does the same, but there's a little eye roll. There's like a okay. Mm-hmm. if I want to preserve my peace, and if I want to preserve this lovely place I want to wander in, I better help.
All right. And so with that, Squall descends upon us, and we kind of start on our journey through the cliffs. The way that this works is if you look at the Tattered Drape Cliffs in the book, there are a list of scene prompts: hollow fortifications, cascading echoes, an early sleeper, a rickety outpost, a shortcut, and a high shelf. We're each going to pick one of these scenes for our characters to kind of guide us through. This is very much like a scene starring your character. The other person can kind of pop in and offer up details. You can also invite the other character into the scene to kind of like see how they're reacting to it. But this is sort of like the part of the journey where your character is really like centered, and then kind of describe like what you experience in that moment. The prompt is there as sort of a guard, and then we can talk about like possible changes that come out of that. But like, would you like to take the first scene, or would you like me to pick the first scene?
You go ahead.
All right. I am thinking, let's see, hollow fortifications, a cat. I started to read through the whole list, but I truly like hollow fortifications. I think it is a nice cross and prompt, and it also like allows me to play up I think a sense of fear a little bit of like what he's truly afraid to lose. Especially because the prompt is a front left empty. I think Crossan like that there's that Rowan, she gives that eye roll, and Crossan like gets to work, is immediately digging ditches, and is like is patting down, is sort of making makeshift sandbags, like piling rocks in certain ways to make up makeshift sandbags, and is like preparing for the arrival of Squall, right? Like I think that like is doing a lot of things. Right, it goes to work very quickly, and I'm gonna invite Rowan into the scene and pull on the prompt of a front left empty to ask you the question: what has Crossan not adequately prepared for? Like, what is the front that has been left empty? What is the thing? What is the hazard that is about to that could either is about to or could potentially befall us, that in sort of his rush to start preparing things for Squall passing through here, what has Crossan overlooked in the environment, in the situation around us? Like, what's the thing that Crossan is not actively preparing for?
Maybe I think maybe I think Crossan is perhaps running through and just really excitedly digging these fortifications and not really kind of taking any care with kind of the stuff he's digging out. He's just like chucking it behind him, and he's actually chucking it behind him uphill.
Mm.
And it's just slowly crumbling back down. I can see him just like really enthusiastically trying to dig these great, trenches, and it's just coming straight back down into these trenches. And it's just Rowan's sort of stood next to him, just kind of being like, maybe you should pay a little more attention to just where you're kind of throwing the debris, throwing all the dirt. I think it's a great idea. I think she's got a bit of a teacher vibe.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I think that's a good idea, but maybe you could try maybe throwing it down, or like be a bit more cautious.
And I think at that moment, I think this is a good closing scene prompt of what is about to occur, because I think that as you are saying that, Squall sort of floats overhead of us, and we see why that is the case, because like a burst of wind and water sweeps over like a sort of well-organized dirt pile that Crossan has assembled, and just like there's just a miniature one moment like mudslide that catches Crossan and sends him tumbling fully down into a little like a shallow crevasse that he's kind of got to like dig his way out of a little bit. And there's a lot of like panicked shouting and fussing. And I think it is an indication that like I think that Crossan very much wants to be, and I think this ties into like why he's here with his shovel and his title of flower. He wants to be useful. He's afraid of losing that status of like someone that has helped with this situation. And this is a moment where he rushed so firmly into being that person that he almost got hurt or embarrassed himself. And I think that's the thing that he's afraid to lose, is he's afraid to be seen as unhelpful. And I think that which brings us to the final piece of a scene. So before I throw it to your scene, the character who has taken the scene can do one of the three following things. We can change one of the core pieces of our character, our name, our pronouns, our title, or our symbol. Or we can add a mark to our character or replace an existing mark with a new one, which is we have up to 3 marks. Marks are descriptors that tell us something about our character's current state. Each location has a list of example marks. For our cliffs, those example marks include reckless, shaken, cautious, grave, puzzled, measured. These are just descriptors of like where our characters are at, personality notes that we have learned about the character. And I am going to take I see it on here and I really enjoy it. I'm going to take over enthusiastic. Is not a one that is explicitly on the sheet, but like kind of captures the vibe that we just saw of Crossan, which is he wants to help, and he's eager to leap into it. It's not necessarily reckless, but it's a spin on that a little bit of he wants to be doing his role so much that he is willing to, that he might rush headlong into things and potentially cause problems.
I like that a lot.
Please.
No.
Oh, I was just gonna say, which ends our scene, which means that it is Rowan's scene to pick one of the prompts ahead of us, and then tell us what is happening.
Yeah. So the one that immediately stood out to me on the list, considering my character is shortcut.
Mm-hmm. What markers lead the way?
Yeah. So I think after this has kind of happened, I think Rowan's quite, despite the eye roll, I think she's quite, inspired a little bit. She's like, I really admire this enthusiasm, and I want to, I feel like that too. I want to help, maybe a little more cautiously, but I really admire this like person with this shovel who's just rushing in and trying to help. So I think she's sort of like, right, okay, how can I be most helpful? I understand the land, I understand how it works. Maybe I can try finding us a shortcut to avoid any more any more potential mudslides,
Mm-hmm.
or any more potential other disasters that could occur. So I think she, once he's out of the ravine, I've dug himself out of his little trench that he's ended up in, or whatever. Um, I think Rowan might. I was going to say climb a tree, but if she's turning into a tree, maybe there's a way that she can. I don't know,
I
grow
I
somehow.
was gonna say like almost like I almost envision kind of a rooting herself and then just sort of like growing,
Mm,
almost watching it. It's almost uh what I see what popped into my head as you kind of started to say that is like I almost see a sort of like a and tell me if you want this to go in a different direction. I almost envision like a time lapse photography effect.
mm.
Like if you watch it, if you watch a time lapse footage of like a tree being planted and growing, like there's that sense of like there's that movement, and that's the visual that popped into my head as you kind of said to grow yourself. Like I'm like seeing that tree growing in a moment.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I had in mind as well. This maybe so she kind of roots herself and then grows up and kind of above the canopy that's maybe near this kind of mudslide area. There's a forest or there's a woodland nearby, and she kind of grows above that kind of canopy to get a kind of I guess to kind of understand the sort of the way that the land works, and to kind of maybe even through the roots, she'd be able to find that too. She could like chat to the other trees and kind of talk to them and see if they have a suggestion for a way through. And so she does that. Um, and the trees seem to think, yeah, there's a nice little path. If you just, it might look like you should go this way, but actually, if you follow around to the left, there's a winding path, but it's slightly hidden. And it's actually a little bit kind of through some very dense overgrowth. But there is a way past that. So I would then look to my travel companion with a shovel and say, I think I might need your help getting through this shortcut.
And I think dusting himself off and kind of like spitting out bits of mud like is there's a moment like I think there's a moment we're crossing like at the second that he hears that question like you can tell is a little bit dejected like see you it's the my over enthusiasm like has caused problems and he's kind of like kicking himself a little, but the second that you ask that question, it's kind of like right back to kind of chest puffed out and like starts kind of like using the shovel to like hack at bits of overgrowth. And I do think that he pauses after a moment of like digging and scraping to kind of look back at you in sort of your growing tree state. Can
To
you
check he's not accidentally like got my foot or something, one
can
of the
you
branches.
can you dig yourself out?
Oh, can I dig myself out?
Like Crossan has like verbatim asked that question and is just sort of
Hmm.
like paused holding the shovel for a moment.
I think this might be the first time that Rowan's ever tried to transform in this way, to this extent. And I think she does respond, oh, I'm not actually sure if I can dig myself out. And then she sort of tries to kind of retract, and she can do it a little bit, but then she definitely gets caught and gets a little bit stuck, uh maybe in this overgrowth or in some of this like very dense root system
Mhm.
in this forest. And I think she says, I think I might be stuck.
And I think like the over enthusiasm almost like melts away a little bit as he kind of like takes the shovel, kind of like looks at the root system, looks at the shovel, I think reaches into his back pocket, like reaches onto his belt, like the back of his belt, and grabs like a tinier like garden spade.
Mhm.
And I think like does spend some time just like quietly like very there's a marked change in his energy as he kind of like markedly unearths some of the deep some or like digs around some of the roots to kind of help Rowan get to a place where she can kind of like fully pull herself out of the ground and sort of take back her original shape a little bit. Like there's a little you can see that like it's a moment of like, oh, wait, actually I can help with this. I hadn't even considered it until this moment.
Yeah, and I think that makes me think of these sort of like marks maybe at the end of the scene. I'm just looking at the list now, and the word shaken is really sort of speaking to Rowan. I think that like she's she's taken inspiration from this very enthusiastic kind of person she's with, and then she's like, I can do this trick. I've not done it this much before. But I can do it. I can help. And suddenly is a little bit like, oh, thrown by her thrown by her ability, being like, that's amazing. I'm a bit shaken that I can do that, but also that then she got herself stuck and needed assistance. I think Rowan's not used to needing help, maybe. So I think she's a bit shaken.
I like that. And so with that, unless there's anything else that you want to add to the scene before we move on.
No, I think that's where I'm imagining.
All right. So then would you like to change one of the core pieces of your note card? Would you like to add something to your character, add a mark to or you're adding shaken to your character?
Oh, adding shaken, yeah.
Yep. I started to read through that and then realized that you had just said that a moment ago. I was like, wait a second. Okay, so we have both gone through our turn, which means that it is time to move on. We will choose one of the following options for a group for the thing that happens next. So are we about to face a peril? Are we going to engage with a threat or an obstacle on the road? Are we about to enter an interlude, a moment of rest or curiosity? Are we going to keep on and go straight to our next location, or are we going to wind down and arrive at our final location? I think we've got time for two more locations, so I don't think we're winding down just yet.
I think we've kind of had a bit of a moment of peril already, maybe with the sort of that sort of like stuckness, that kind of like blocking in the route. What were the other?
We can go to our next location, or we can face an interlude on the journey.
Maybe an interlude.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is similar to a location. We are going to each have a scene. We're going to if we go to page 12 in the book, or 14 in the book is the list of them, but the way this is going to work is we're going to choose an interlude and then have a scene of us examining what happens on this brief interlude. Is this us at a campfire, having a meeting, seeing a distraction? Are we basking? Is this a moment of revelry, or is this a jaunt? What's the tone of the scene that we're about to have?
I think a distraction might be nice. I love a good distraction.
I like that. What draws us off the path? I think what I would love to see a little bit, all of our locations, we've got a forest, a canyon, ruins, dunes, a lake, plain, cliffs, a mountain, a pass through mountain, like a shore, like all of our are very like desolate. And if we're thinking a distraction, I would love to see like how these characters and how Squall interact when we find ourselves in a place of people and of like a populated place, and like what goes on for us, like when we're kind of in this sort of like distracted, more densely populated environment.
I think it would have to be the thing that comes into my head is that it would be if it's just a distraction rather than peril. I think it would need to be somewhere that's quite sheltered from the storm. I don't think the people that we're meeting are necessarily bearing the full force of this storm, Colossus.
My
Um,
brain goes immediately to underground. Like it goes immediately
mm,
to like we have traveled this path for a while. We are out of the cliffs or maybe even on the edge of the cliffs as we go to our next location. There is like a cave system and there is like a village or like a small city or village or gathering of people that like have either like built like a mine space or like live in a series of caves so that like Squall kind of rests overhead or like or gently floats through some caves, but like there is a place of people that, to your point, is like sheltered from that but is underground, and we kind of find ourselves for a little while like among people in an underground environment. That experience of being sheltered in a cave or a house like when a storm is raging outside is kind of the energy that I think we find ourselves in this moment. I'm envisioning also like a marketplace that fills a series of caves.
mm. That's amazing. That sounds great. Yeah, I can imagine this squall is kind of hanging out by the entrance to the cave, kind of um, rumbling and raining, but kind of like peering in a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
kind of curiously, but isn't coming in. I think squall is like, I'll if I tried to come in, maybe you know, I would cause a bit too much
Mm-hmm.
destruction in the smaller space. So I think I'm picturing squall just kind of eavesdropping on the outside as we kind of wander into the marketplace. Um, yeah.
And as you say that, I kind of I think I know what Crossan's I think I know how Crossan is dealing with this distraction, and I think it ties into Squall directly a little bit.
Hmm.
Because I think like part of Crossan's distraction is I I am learning in this moment that Crossan is a fish storyteller, is like a bar room storyteller, like a little bit of like bragging, and it was a little bit like hand on the hip, like, well, you see, I had to dig a trench that was very tactical. I had to dig us all out of the growth. But I think that part of that is also like as he's kind of spinning these yarns, I think he's a yarn spinner, and I think he's
Mm.
periodically looking over and seeing Squall peering in. I think there are definitely moments of like Crossan bringing people out to the lip of the cave a little bit and kind of like telling stories with Squall there and kind of like being like, you've got to taste, you've got to grab a bowl, you got to try some of this storm water, it's the freshest water you're ever going to try. And like Squall spin up some rainwater, and like bringing I think there's a moment where Crossing kind of sees Squall peering in and feels a little bit of like, I want my friend to be included, even if they are a giant storm entity that cannot come in, and is like doing what Crossan does, which is like spinning yarns and kind of love like the equivalent of like slapping somebody on the chest a little bit to kind of like get them to do the thing like do the thing that they're known for. And so we're kind of seeing some people like holding up bowls and drinking storm water, and like there's a crack of lightning and everybody kind of jumps up and like is kind of like spinning a party around Squall a little bit if they can't come into the market themselves.
I love that. I can really picture that sort of like almost like a sort of a dog that's got really like wet and muddy that can't come into the living
Mhm.
room and just sort of like oh you can't come in but we'll all come in like um we'll all come and sort of half have one foot outside. I'm imagining kind of like rapturous rounds of applause at the odd like lightning strike and like oohs and ahs and
Yeah, there's a
kind of
there's a
drawing
flash
quite a
of green
crowd. Yeah.
lightning specifically. Like there's like
Mm.
one flash of green lightning that everybody's like, "Oh, it was green."
Yeah, I think I can imagine all these people being quite impressed at the sort of at the stories that are being told. I can't picture what Rowan's doing. I think Rowan is kind of watching this unfold and kind of smiling, just kind of enjoying the joy that this is kind of clearly bringing across. And but then I think she might wander off. I think she's gonna do her thing, which is just meander a little bit,
Mm,
see what she can see. And I think she comes across some I think she comes across a market stall that has lots of different lots of different artifacts on it that are maybe carved out of different kinds of wood. And she sort of starts looking at them, and they're kind of maybe they're figures carved out of wood, and she's kind of picking them up and looking at them and in kind of interest, because she's sort of, she's quite shaken from this last experience, and she's thinking about this, her ability to turn into this tree, and she's seeing these figures of wood, and she's having a bit of like a reflective moment while she can hear all this joy and silliness happening in the background, and kind of enjoying it from afar, and having a little bit of a moment of resetting and kind of being like, okay, I'm learning something about myself, and thanks to this person I'm with, and this storm, this colossus I'm with, and I think she feels nice and kind of calmed by this sort of market stall that she's sort of found and wandered off to. I don't know if Corson's noticed her wander off.
You say that.
Nice time.
You say that. I honestly I don't know that he necessarily has. I think that it is fully like at the end of this scene. Maybe you turn back up, and like I think that he simultaneously like has not noticed that you wandered off, but like when you show back up, there's the sort of even if we're not literally at a table, there's the sort of like metaphorical pulling up a chair, and it's just sort of a, we're all just we're here, we're laughing. This is a metaphorical gather around the bar, and you're here now, so pull up a chair. But like I think that Carson had his own role, and it's sort of that sense of like when you're here, there's a spot for you, but if you got to wander off, wander off.
Yeah, it's like kind of recognizing what each other needs. The characters are kind of like, I see that you need to do this, and I see you need to do this, and that's cool. And I feel like it feels like a nice little like, I think it's a nice moment of them kind of seeing things from each other's perspective a little bit. Maybe when they meet back up at the end, they're like kind of a moment of understanding that'll kind of help them then in the next, I guess, part of the journey.
Yeah. So we each now make a character change. You can add a mark, you can remove a mark, or have your character exit the story, or shift one of the core pieces on your note card. I have added a piece to my character sheet. I'm adding the mark. You can have up to 3 marks, and I'm adding a second mark that is, I'm trying to decide the right word. I've got personable, but I don't know if that's quite, I think it is, because I think between over enthusiastic and personable captures Crossan's kind of vibe of like, I want people to feel included, and I will throw myself into that a little bit. I think personable is what I'm adding to my character sheet a little bit.
I think maybe Rowan picked up one of these figures and bought it. Or no, I think maybe Rowan did a trade on the market for her compass, for one of these kind of wood carved figures, as a kind of I guess if she's sort of realizing, if I can speak to trees, if I can kind of speak to nature in this way and find my way that way, I don't need this compass anymore. Actually, it's not, that's not how I'm going to find my way now. So I think she does a trade at that market stall, and so she swaps. She's changed her symbol is now this wood carved figure. I think.
Oh, I love that. I adore that. All right, so I think that we're going to our next location. And I've randomly pulled 2 locations. Would you like to go to the Twilight Chamber Shore or Windbreak Mountain?
What's the first one? Sorry, I missed the
Twilight Chamber Shore. Or Twilight Amber. Oh, Twilight Amber. I'm seeing it now. Or as one word, it was reading in my head, but now I'm seeing it. Twilight. Do you want to go to Twilight Amber Shore or Windbreak Mountain?
I think we've already been to a mountain. Or like
I think a shore feels like a good
shore.
I think it feels like a good change of pace. So this is hues of calm in betwixt hours, soft glow scattered, driftwood and kelp, washing at the fringes, with the prompt of what astounds you. So again, so this is the scene. I mean, I grew up like this is reading this prompt and then realizing what our Colossus is to get blatantly personal for a moment.
Mhm.
I grew up in New Jersey in America, which is not far from the Atlantic Ocean, so we're not far from the shore. And I have summer memories of friends renting a beach house for the weekend and going there, and a few times like a storm breaks out, and the visuals of like a true like roiling storm at on the shore, it's truly a like, to me, that is a truly beautiful visual that I want to just luxuriate in for a moment of like, you see the clouds and the way that they toss the water, and it is, the gray sky kind of, the gray sky matches this gray water, and it just kind of starts to look like everything starts to just blur into this sort of like surging grayish green ocean colored expanse in the distance. And it is kind like, and then you get these flashes of lightning that are mirrored in the water, so you just see like two flashes of lightning at the same time. It is this, the visuals of it are striking to me, of like what this looks like as this storm entity comes down upon the shore.
And I like that maybe as we're approaching this place, it is very, it is a very beautiful, calm kind of place, and we're approaching it in a from a direction where we can see it for a really long time before we get there.
Mm-hmm.
And as we're kind of arriving, I'm imagining it slowly, us watching this kind of very peaceful, this very peaceful kind of place that's got, a couple of boats, maybe like bobbing a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
to suddenly becoming this like quite intense storm. The closer we get, and that kind of strange feeling of like moving with the storm, it kind of following you. It's quite an amazing image, I think.
Yeah, I love that. So, again, we're each going to pick a scene. Would you like to make the first scene, or would you like me to pull the first scene?
I liked it when you pulled the first scene
All
last
right.
time because I come out of that.
I think I'm trying to. I'm gonna. Here's what I'm gonna do, because I'm not sure which direction. Let me see. There's two that I'm pulling on it, either the horizon or the shallows, because like a moment popped into my head that I really want to pull on. I think I'm gonna pull on. I think I'm gonna pull on the shallows, because I think this is an opportunity for me to get to, for us to see. Because I like the prompt of what memory surfaces.
Mm.
And also, I think there's kind of a beautiful moment that sort of popped into my head as we were describing, like seeing the shore, seeing the water, seeing the storm sort of like roll onto the shore. I think a lot of this is now shallows, right? Because there's a storm. And so, like, shallows, like a lot of sand pools have filled with water by nature of squall being overhead. So I think it's kind of wherever we go, there are these little shallow pools of water. And I think crossing, and I'm almost going to immediately invite Rowan into this scene. I think like finds like some rocks to, or some rocks to sit in among the shallows, kind of like pops off his boots, puts his feet into some water that has emerged. Because I think that what has occurred, I think that Crossan has kind of like signaled, has been practicing flag signals with his shovel to kind of guide Squall in directions. And I think Crossan gives like a signal, and we see Squall just like roll out onto the water, and we see the storm just like hit the water for a while.
Mm.
This is kind of the place where Squall would just get to like play and relax and sit, because it's kind of just open water.
Mm.
And so like I think that the memory that surfaces, and I think this is something that Crossan is like directly, I think, has offered a spot to Rowan, and like the two of us are sitting on the rocks, and Crossan is kind of like watching this as like, as a farm family, almost all of us, we raise livestock, and there are just times where you just watch the animals just be animals. It's remarkably soothing. It's a calming thing. You just kind of watch them run around, flip here. Sometimes you just kind of get to sit back and like watch them exist in their spaces. It's kind of a fascinating thing. And we're just kind of watching a storm cloud play, for lack of a better way to put it. Like we're just saying is dancing, and they are rolling across the water and like throwing lightning bolts down and crashing and sweeping things up. And there are these moments of like it's terrifying to see because there are these moments of like funnel cloud like typhoons that like sweep up and then just drop down in an instant.
Mm.
And just like watching this occur up on the water and just like, huh, sometimes this is just what the job entails.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I think Rowan's having sort of, yeah, having similar sort of, in the same way that she was sort of enjoying watching Carson kind of, play this kind of big, uh, charismatic storyteller role. I think she's enjoying watching this storm kind of play and kind of, I think, looking and thinking like, I can see a little bit of myself in this as this kind of, maybe I can play with this kind of tree power thing I have, or sort of saying like, oh, maybe I should be a little bit more kind of loose in that way and allow myself this playground. And I think maybe she's thinking, what's my playground? Maybe identifying maybe more with the storm than Crossan, than the farmer necessarily, is kind of thinking
Mm-hmm.
from the perspective of the animals playing, even a little bit in this moment. Like that's the side of the anecdote that she's kind of
Yeah,
ruminating on. Yeah.
I like that. And I think that's the end of my scene. And I am going to, I think in this moment, like remove I am switching the mark of over enthusiastic and I am switching it to parental. I think that this is truly a moment of like watching Squall like in this moment of like release, for lack of a better way to put it. Like Squall, like so much of this journey has been kind of like finding ways to help Squall kind of contain, but this is a moment of like exuberance. And I think that this has brought out a sense of we are here to care for this beautiful, terrifying thing. And I think it has kind of brought out a parental sense of Crossan in a very specific way.
That's really lovely. Oh, I like that. um, hmm. I think I think I'm drawn to the horizon, and I think it's a little bit in a similar way to how you were
Mm-hmm.
saying about in uh like a personal way, the with the storms. When you're talking about that, I was sort of
Mm-hmm.
thinking, oh, we don't really get that so much off the coast of northeast of England, but we do get fret. I don't know if like kind of very dense sea fog, and it's so it basically drops off as soon as you hit the shore. So like the sort of fog ends at the beach, and then a
Oh,
couple of streets away, there's no fog, and it's like gorgeous sunshine. But
yeah.
it's a really strange, and you cannot see the horizon at all. And a strange, it's quite a strange, surreal kind of space, and it's very calm but
Mm-hmm.
very disorientating because you can't see the horizon. And yeah, I guess the horizon was sort of stuck out to me for that reason. And I think maybe as they're kind of watching the storm sort of play, um, Rowan sort of says, "Oh, is there a sort of way that we can maybe calm the storm? I wonder what that would kind of look like,
Mm.
um,
Mm.
and maybe that could conjure that kind of scene. It would suddenly kind of make the horizon disappear. I'm just imagining like Squall just kind of dispersing in this very like soothed kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Roman says, you know, can you seem to be able to communicate with these kind of gestures you're making. Is there a way that you can sort of reassure Squall to say, we're here, and we're looking after you, and maybe that would make Squall, yeah, kind of feel calm in that way or something. I don't know.
And I think he sits and like he kind of he pauses for a moment and he thinks about it, and he looks at his shovel, and he looks at like, I think this is a moment where Crossan has sort of realized the thing that like we've seen that we saw this a little bit like at the front of the cave of like and playing out on the water. I think that Crossan like has to this point kind of gotten lost in the familiar parts of Squall a little bit.
Mhm.
you know um when you grow up among animals, when you have interacted with things or people or animals, like you train yourself to spot the familiar. And I think that Crossan has been very actively doing that, of spotting the ways that Squall as an entity, as a being, is personable, or is lively, is a living thing, and that you asking that and looking out at this horizon is kind of the first time that Crossan has kind of been hit truly with the nature of what we are accompanying. You know what I mean? Like the difference has kind of popped, like the has shifted back into focus of like, oh god, we are really truly like navigating a living storm. And I
Mhm.
think looks at his shovel and looks out at like this kind of hurricane dancing on the water a little bit. And I think ultimately kind of looks up at Rowan and is like, at this moment, I might not be big enough, but I have an idea. And I think the next thing that we see is, maybe, if I can suggest this, like
Mhm.
perhaps I think it is the next thing that we see is Crossan like doing symbols with the shovel, and a gigantic tree, like Rowan as a gigantic tree behind him, like swaying in the same
Mhm.
way, like mirroring the things to kind of like signal out to the water. And from that we see the storm shift from this play state to a steady fog on the horizon.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. I really like that. Just, yeah, that kind of like, you can play if you want, but also we're here and you can also rest.
Mhm.
I think that's the thing that like is nice to maybe give the storm as well. That like, so yeah, I like the idea that the Rowan's kind of desperately trying to like mimic
Mhm.
these sort of dance moves in sort of giant tree form. I'm imagining it as a kind of quite a fun little jumpy around dance with the
Mhm.
shovel as well. I'm imagining it very animated.
Yeah.
Um,
I like this. I love this a
and
lot.
and Rowan actually quite clumsily copying, I think. I don't think she's not used to all this yet. She's quite a clumsy tree, I think, still. It's still very new. So I don't think she's doing it quite as gracefully as Crossan is actually. And I think, yeah, and then I think that I'd like to think that then, yeah, Squall kind of
I like
calms
that.
and settles on this horizon, and then the horizon kind of, yeah, disappears in this kind of grey, sort of mysterious kind of fog. Um, and the prompt is what you wish for. And I think Rowan wishes for, um, I guess wishes for some. I think Rowan has spent a long time kind of by herself, not knowing, kind of thinking she's very headstrong and knowing what she wants and wanting to be alone. And I think actually in this moment she wishes for what she's kind of slowly getting through this journey, which is kind of companions that are maybe very different to her, but that kind of offer these things that she doesn't have, and that kind of like fit together really well in um, like a kind of family, or kind of companions, I guess, for her journey. I think that's what she wishes
Mm,
for.
I love that. I love that a lot. And what would you like to take one of the actions? Either taking a
Hmm.
mark, changing a mark, changing a part of your sheet.
I think I would like to change shaken. I don't think she's shaken anymore.
Okay.
Um, I think actually one of the example marks I can see here is open, and I
Mm,
think that kind of feels, yeah, that sort of feels like a where Rowan is in this moment. She's kind of opening herself up a little bit. yeah, I think I'm gonna get rid of shaken and replace it with open.
I like that. I really like that. And I think this feels very natural. This is the end of our turn, and I think this feels very naturally like a good opportunity for us to I don't think this is Squall's final place of hibernation, but this feels like a good time to roll out our final location move off to sleep. And the way that that works is that we pull up the sleeping grounds location and we describe as a group the sleeping grounds, its prompts from the Colossus's perspective, and then we play one last round of turns using the prompts from the sleeping grounds. So this is yawning chasms, drooping arches, bleary whispers trailing, a blanketing sense of scale. And I think that we are here. Like we are, this is where we kind of, I think that state of rest is, what is that like, what does that look like? We kind of touched on it a little bit. Like, what do you envision like a true state of rest looks like for Squall?
I think it is the sort of like, because it wouldn't be like a clear sky, because then it wouldn't be there. There's maybe, I think, that kind of like dense fog or a mist, or a kind of maybe really high up clouds, perhaps. I mean, like, so we were talking about like it being sort of fog on the sea, but maybe the rest space is actually much higher, much higher up, and kind of away from kind of destruction, where I guess Squall can thunder and lightning
And
as much as they want.
and I think building on that, like, and building on like the idea of scale, I think is really compelling. Of like, from our perspective, I think what we see is Squall spreads itself out. It rises. They rise themselves up high. Squall allows themselves to spread out and be comfortable and be out in the open. And we see just how massive that makes Squall. And they spread across the entire sky around us. And there's just this moment of recognizing the size of our companion, right? Recognizing like how massive this being is as it fully spreads, as they fully spread themselves out. Like we see that this is a storm that covers the entire sky. And it is that sort of resting cloud structure with lightning crackling far, far up in the stratosphere that is the form of its momentary rest. And so with our final two scenes, we can take a hushed cavern, a last harvest, a scarlet overlook, a giant's lullaby, outskirts, or patch weavers. And I've been thinking about this a little bit. I kind of think the scene that I am most compelled by is the giant's lullaby. And I think that I think that Rowan eventually loses sight of where Crossin is. And like there's this moment as like camp is made, we're settled in for the evening. Crossin seems to at one moment be nowhere to be found until you see like the glint of a silhouette on a far, far high up rocky cliffside on this, looking out on this shore over the water, and you see just like you see the metallic glint of the shovel as Crossin is just quietly sitting. And you get up there and the sounds of the sea are kind of muted because we're so high up, and it truly is just the sounds of a roiling storm far off in the distance. And it is this energy of, I think that the song, and I think that Crossin is like experiencing this song. And I think like there's this thing that like I gotta relate this to a personal story because it popped into my head. There's this thing that I find that I fall into with my cat. She's a very vocal cat, and she will just my wife and I always say, like, if you did not know her, you would think that she was in agonizing pain all of the time. because she just yells, she screams, but it's just because she is delightful and joyful and happy and just yelling. And I find myself sometimes just like not yelling back, but like she'll just scream and I'll be like, hello. And then in the mouth, like, hello. And I think that Crossan is not even saying the word or saying like hello, is just kind of like shouting at their lungs, like shouting at the top of their lungs back at this storm as like there is a crash of lightning and then just sort of a like welcoming scream of like, ah, and it's this back and forth as we are just having this moment of like communicating with each other. And I think that is where that is where you find that is the lullaby that Crossan and the Storm are sharing with one another, is just we don't really know what one another is fully saying, but we're just we are acknowledging one another by way of like cracking lightning and shouting, and that is what they are bringing. That is what they find themselves in, and I I think that I'm making two changes a little bit
Mhm.
because I think that Crossan has found themselves a little bit has found themselves a little bit in this sudden connection with Squall, and I think that it facilitates. They have changed their pronouns to match Squall, as they're having this moment of like seeing themselves reflected in their friend. So their pronouns have shifted and their role has shifted to Storm Tender.
Mm, that's really nice.
So what is Rowan's final scene?
Hmm. I I'm drawn to uh I'm kind of imagining this sort of scene playing out and that you're describing and drawn to patch weavers, which the prompt underneath is tending to others. And I think sort of in a similar way, I guess, to Corson, but kind of Rowan's kind of happening upon this this exchange, this lovely chorus that's happening of sounds. Um, and I think she, as her tendency is, she sort of stays a little back and just kind of enjoys watching this unfold until eventually maybe the storm goes to more of a kind of a quieter rumble and Crossan kind of is, falling asleep a little bit. And I'm just imagining Crossan's snores kind of imitating that of the storm,
Oh,
and
I
kind of
like
the
that.
kind of Crossan sort of dozed off and is snoring a bit, and Squall kind of thinks that they're still that they're still kind of communicating, so they're kind of having this little like sleep
That's
sleep
cute.
conversation.
That's really
And
cute.
my immediate um yeah, my immediate thought. And I think Rowan comes across this and sort of kind of stands for a while and then realizes that, her two companions are kind of sleeping, and I think she thinks, well, I'm not that tired right now, but I am enjoying being kind of here. And I think she decides, well, maybe I can keep watch while they
Mm.
sleep. Um, so I think she sets her roots down kind of around where Grossen's dozed off on this side of this kind of mountain, and kind of grows, kind of not like huge, but just, just a little bit, grows just a little bit, like enough to kind of maybe become a bit of a kind of, a bit of a windbreak
Mm.
sort of thing,
Hmm.
I guess. Uh, Not to shield from Squall, just to kind of, you know, maybe connect them in a way.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, not like a kind of, not getting in between, more of a, yeah, reaching up and down at the same time.
I like that.
Uh,
I really, really love that.
Watching them both.
That's wonderful. And would you like to change your character at all?
Hmm. I think I can't think what my first thing was actually. What did I change?
You don't have to, especially as this is the final beat of the game, but it's on the table if you'd like to.
I think I would like to add a mark, which I think I would like to add sturdy.
Sturdy. I like that.
I think she feels sturdy, and she feels like she has a reason, or like a kind of purpose, I guess, in this moment. Yeah.
And with that, we this chapter in the journey of Rowan and Crossan and Squall drifts off, and that is game. This was a wonderful, joyful experience, and I'm so happy about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I feel very emotional. I feel like I love all our characters so much.
That was beautiful and fun and lovely, and I am over the moon. That was great. Thank you so much for joining me and playing this game with me. This was a wonderful experience.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
I am delighted. So, real quick before we wrap up, where can people find you and your work online?
I am on Instagram and Twitter and all the other places, as long as they keep existing, as Me Lost Me. You can find me on Spotify and Bandcamp and all the places you usually find music. And you can get the new album on CD and vinyl as well on the internet where you buy that stuff from.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for doing the show. This was a wonderful, truly joyful experience. And for now, I'm going to throw it over to me in the future so that he can wrap up with the show. Take a future me. Thanks, Past Me. And thanks again to Jayne for coming on the show. That game was, it was beautiful. Like, it was a beautiful, moving experience that I am over the moon that we got to share together. Like, it was touching and sweet and just absolutely perfect. I could not be happier with it. Be sure to head to the show notes to grab your own copy of Autumn of Giants, as well as Jayne's new album, RPG. They're both really, really special, wonderful pieces of art, and I think that you should really check them both out. And be sure to follow Jayne on Twitter at MeLostMe. Then while you're on Twitter, follow us at Party of One Pod. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/PartyOfOnePodcast. Find us on TikTok at Party of One Podcast. Find us on Tumblr at Party of One Pod. Subscribe to our newsletter at buttondown.email/PartyOfOnePodcast. And join our Discord community at bit.ly/PartyOfOneDiscord. If you enjoy the show, there's a lot of ways to support it. You can support us financially at patreon.com/JeffStormer or Ko-fi.com/JeffStormer. You can give us a nice iTunes review, shout us out to a friend, give us some love on social media. You can buy some Party of One merch at bit.ly/PartyOfOneMerch. Or if you're looking for more great podcast content, you can check out All My Fantasy Children, which is a character creation, storytelling, and world-building podcast that I make with my best friend in the world, Aaron Catano-Saez. We take a listener-submitted prompt and spin it into an original fantasy character, populating a shared universe one story at a time. You can also check out Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, which is an actual play about a heartless witch, a cozy house, and the many people making their homes inside. Both of those you can find wherever you get your podcasts. Party of One is, as always, produced and edited by Jeff Stormer and Jen Frank. Music for the show comes from the song Infinite Lives by Mega Ran featuring the D&D Sluggers, and the Party of One logos by Evan Rowland. If you'd like to inquire about advertising rates, coming on the show as a guest, or about press coverage of the show, you can email me at partyofonepodcast@gmail.com. And unless I am mistaken, that is all we do here. So until next time, thank you so much for listening. Remember to fight the forces of fascism every single day. Remember that self-love and self-care are radical and defiant acts of resistance. And as always, party on, everybody.